it's worth it at this point to review correlatives. Things that relate together. Grammatically, word pairings that are going to be needed to understand each other. The first few that you learned was et, ... et, both and, out, either or, neque, neither nor, non modo, sed etiam, not only but also. And so now we have quantum leap, quantum tantum. As much or however much, so much or just as much. We're going to see that in this story, in this chapter. Erase and start fresh. Alright. Viri, quantas pecunia, caperant. Okay, so that's my quantas part, right? It's got a subject, it's got an object, it's got a verb. Tantas, so it's relating the object. So however much object, just as much object, and then another verb. So there's a structural component, but it's mostly a logical component. So overall, I'm comparing objects. The subject remains the same. And weary normally means men, but if I look ahead at this sentence, I've got weary, and I've got uxoribus. Contextually, keep in mind that weir has a couple of meanings, right? That weir can mean man, but in different contexts it can mean hero, and here, most likely, it's going to mean husband, right? And an uxor is a wife. So, weary, however much pecunias they have acaperunted ab uxoribus from their uxoribuses, dotus nomine, genitive going with a noun. And this noun's in the ablative case, right? I mean, so like by, with, or from, but here probably more likely in the nomine dotus. Just as much, or so much, and then my other verb, right? Just as much, they communicant, which does not mean it's English cognate communicate. They communicate, or they communicant just as much, ex suis bonis. Aestimatione facta is a participle and a noun in the ablative case, so together they are an ablative absolute. I can put it in anywhere. Like I can put it in right here. They communicant just as much ex suis bonis, parentheses, with an aestimatione having been factad, and then cum dotibus, right? They communicant. It's going to need an ablative of accompaniment, this cum dotibus. So I can put all these things in a different order. Like I could say, however much they have acaperunted, they communicant with the dotibus just as much from suis bonis. And then at the end, with an aestimatione having been factad. So I can put those in any order. Ablative absolutes are grammatically separate from the rest of the sentence and are somewhat movable when we translate. Huius omnis pecuniae, all of that's genitive. So it needs to go with a noun that's near it. Looks like ratio is the nearest noun. And conjunctum is an adverb. We have had many adverbs that end in im. We've had statim. We've had furtim. We've had, obviously, conjunctum. I know there's others, but those are the only ones coming to mind. Praesertim. Definitely others. Okay, so I'm going to put that adverb since I didn't have. I mean, it could go with one of these adjectives, but it's probably gonna go with the verb. Okay, a ratio of huius omnis pecuniae is habetur conjunctum li, and what else? New subject verb, and the fructus servanter. Easy. Uter eorum. Uter is a fun word. It's the opposite of neuter. Masculine, feminine, neuter. Neuter means neither. Right? So uter is without the n, right? So neither, if you remove the n from either or from neither you get just this part, right? But it can mean not exactly. That might not be the best way to translate it. So we can say here like whichever instead of like either of them. We'll say like whichever of them will have superarit, short for superawerit, syncopated form of superawerit. Wita, ablative, so like in wita, right? Whichever of them will have superarited wita ad eum, participial or prepositional phrase. Ad eum. Pars looks like a subject. Pars, utriusque, which is a form of uterque, which is related to uter, but uterque means like both of them. Like both or both or either, but like in the way that there's a both implied. Like it's really uter plus que, like and either, but it means both of them. So whichever eorum vita superarit, to that person, right? To eum, but not necessarily like him as in the uter that has superarited. To eum, the pars utriusque, which is genitive here. Maybe like the share of each, right? So of both parts, right? But not this part, right? Like so, like the share of both parts, or the share of each part, along with the fructibus ablative of accompaniment of the fructibus of superiorum temporum pervenit. So pars was my subject and pervenit is my verb. So to that person, the pars of utrius, along with these, pervenits. Subject again, keeping in mind the meaning. Weary in uxores, or in plus a person can mean like against that person, or like over that person. In plus a person is a little bit, in plus the accusative of a person is a little different. So over their uxores, just as over their liberi. Vitae necusque, genitive. This is my verb, and those genitives are going with the noun closest to them, right? Habent potestatem vitae necusque. And cum clause, and it's indicative. So when the pater familiae, it's a participial phrase, right? When the pater familiae having been natust illustriore loco, when he discusses subject, the ending cum clause, main clause, the propinqui of him convenient. And what else do they do? This is an if clause. So it's got its own grammar, right? If the race, when it's in suspicione regarding the morte. Back to my main clause. His propinqui conveniens, and they habent an object, a quaestionum, in servulum modem de uxoribus. And another if clause, si compartum est. What happens? They interficiunt the object, them having been excruciated with igni and omnibus tormentis. Okay. Funera could be my subject, nominative plural. The funera sunt, pro cultu with a genitive next to it, prepositional phrase. The funera sunt magnifica et sumptuosa. And omnia, all the things which arbitrancer, inside of my relative clause, which they arbitrancer, indirect statement, which they think were cordi dative to the vivis, they inferunt all those things in ignem, even anomalia. And ablative of degree of difference a little bit before this, like, this memory in time, like this, like, time memorial. New subject, seria and clientes, quos habeis delectus este constabat, right? Relative clause. Seria and clientes were cremabantered with justis funeribus having been confectis, ablative absolute. They were cremabanted together. And then the relative clause describes seria and clientes, whom it was constabat that, or whom it was constabat were, this is like an indirect statement, were delectos ab eis. They were cremabantered una, and then ablative absolute, with justis funeribus having been confectis. Yikes.